You are the winner of the Mental Health and Wellbeing Special Recognition Award 2023.
I've been called an expert in this particular field, which is substance-related self-harm. And I will, at the end, I can give you loads of links and things so that you can share them, because, I'm just kind of a conduit for the information that I've been privy to. And I just want to share that with other people. I've had 3 family members that have passed away from taking their own lives. The closest one to me is my niece, who died in 2008, eventually of her injuries that she sustained when she actually first tried to take her life. I also tried to take my life when I was 48. I'm 57 now, so it's just coming up for 10 years. It was a perimenopausal, and I'd like to say this is they're starting to see links with menopause with women now. There's been a surge of perimenopausal and menopausal women. There was one recently in our village that went missing for a few days, and unfortunately they found her, and she was 49. So I think, I don't believe that there's not a reason for somebody wanting to end their life. And I guess that has been my passion, is trying to educate people, because when it happened to me previously, I didn't have a clue. And, hindsight's always a wonderful thing, where, when something traumatic like that does happen in your life, and then you find out that there's so many services available, and you think, well, why didn't I know about this before? So my biggest aim is prevention. It's just so sad that people don't listen to things like this in advance. We're given the information, and I suppose algorithms don't help, because here we are with trying to do prevention work, and we're not even allowed to say the name of it. I mean, it's just not helpful, is it? I was asked to go to this event in another part of the valley, and 3 young men had taken their lives. And I went there as a Samaritan, and it was very difficult, because I could tell that there was things that were happening that we weren't allowed to talk about as Samaritans. We weren't allowed to sort of engage in it. But I understood from the people that were there, and the other people that were talking, that there was drugs involved.
Yeah.
And so I went away from this, and I felt as if I wanted to, because my background is graphic design, and I wanted to create a leaflet that reached men particularly. The feedback from that has been brilliant. I mean, I engaged with over 50 people to try and, help me inform what I wanted to put on this leaflet. There was sort of a dry run, and then we went live with it. But then lockdown happened. Just before this, in the December, I met a lady called Nicola Smurden, who loved the idea of the leaflet, but sadly, she'd lost her son. Here he comes. Sadly, she'd lost her son, Tom, to the previous year, and it was during the come down from cocaine and alcohol. And when she was telling me, I was like, I remember going to a mental health show and seeing another lady called Nicola Abraham, and she was talking about her son, Jacob, who had taken alcohol and cocaine, and somehow during the come down, he'd done the same, he'd taken his own life. And I said to her, well, why isn't anything being done about this? Why aren't we doing more about it? Yeah. And I couldn't understand why, if you've got 2 people that have had virtually the same experience, that's not a coincidence. There's got to be something in that. So anyway, then the lockdown came and everything got put on hold with the leaflet, obviously. And me and Nicola were still talking about different things, about developing the leaflet and one thing and another. And then she was explaining to me basically that what had happened when it had happened to her, that she got in touch with the coroners, who said that they thought that this was a thing, but they didn't have enough evidence, and they needed to go back through it. What they'd agreed to do with Nicola is do a review of something like 5 years coronary reports to look at the issue. Because so what happens if somebody dies suddenly and it's not classed as a natural death? Then you have to have a coroner involved. You have to have a coroner's inquest, which is basically like having an investigation. It's like having a proper police investigation, but the coroner is a judiciary, so he's like the guy that has to bring all the information together, and he will look at the medical evidence. He'll look at the toxicology. So one of the things we found is toxicology isn't always taken at every sudden death. So that was a big issue. If it is taken, then it can affect the final ruling of the coroner's report. So this is just a bit of background information for you now. So if somebody dies by their own hand, there's a load of different conclusions that can be reported. So it could be that it's classed as an accidental death. If there's no note or anything like that, and there's no evidence of pre-existing mental health issues, it could be classed as an accident or a narrative death. It could all be this. They'll have done it in the same way, but it'll be different conclusions depending on the coroner. And because coroners don't have, because they're a judiciary, they don't have a specific set of laws around this. So it's up to the coroner whether he orders a toxicology test. It's up to the coroner whether he thinks it was an accident or whether he thinks they were meant to do it. So this is a lot of reason why the when we go to people like the Welsh Government and we say, look, we believe that this is the case, that this is happening all the time, they say, well, we haven't got any evidence, because when that's all recorded, it goes into the ONS statistics or the data banks of all these things, but they haven't got a consistent database. So some of them aren't recorded as that, some of them are recorded as this, and some is recorded as the other. So this is why we've been struggling with the evidence. We decided to do an online survey, and we had a captive audience, which was amazing. And basically, we had 820 odd replies from this. And it was only a social media thing. We just did 10 questions on a survey, Survey Monkey, and it came back with basically that 77%. That we were looking at predominantly male deaths, that approximately 77% had no pre-existing mental health issues. So do you know anybody who died by sudden death as a result of taking drugs and alcohol together? So yes, a family member was 29%, friend 45%, other 11%. So there was only 15% who didn't know anybody. If yes, what age were they when they died? And the predominant ages were 19 to 24 and 25 to 34. So that's why we
Right.
say between 18 and 35 is our main demographic. Were they male or female? We got 97% were male.
That doesn't surprise me.
Have you or anyone close to you experienced feelings during or after drinking alcohol or taking drugs? And just alcohol was 24%, alcohol and drugs together 25%, and just drugs 6%. So then we asked what types of alcohol and drugs were taken. So it's alcohol spirits, or was it alcohol, beer, lager, wine, cider, cocaine, ketamine, synthetic cannabinoids, synthetic cannabinoids. So alcohol spirits were 52%. Alcohol, beer, general was 41%. Cocaine was 51%. Ketamine was 8.9%, and then the others were quite low down. Do you know of anybody's taken their life due to alcohol or drugs, or did they have? Now this is the key question. If you know of somebody who died self-inflicted due to drugs and alcohol, did they have a diagnosed mental health problem before their death? 52% said no, they seem fine. 24% said no, but I think they had issues. Only 13% said they previously received help or treatment. Only 4% said they were on medication or receiving help. So those two figures, the top two figures, equate to 77%. Okay.
Yeah.
So that for us was a massive figure. So it was asking then, is the people who are responding to it male or female? It was mostly female responding to it because it was on Facebook. What are their age? It was like 24 to 54, which I think indicates mothers, sisters, or whatever, and which area they live in. So that was the result of the first survey that we did. So that to me said that, what the problem is with particularly young men. A lot of them are not showing any mental health issues prior to them taking their lives. The reason why I'm doing the work that I am is because well, it actually shows in the national statistics anyway that about 70% don't come into contact with services. So I'm like, well, if we're showing 77% on this survey and the national statistics show 70%, surely that's a common figure.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of people don't show prior signs. And this is the thing, all of the prevention strategies are all around seeking help. Talk to somebody, listen to somebody, reach out. Well, how if somebody doesn't think they've got a mental health problem, how are they going to reach out? And specifically for people who are taking what we call recreational drugs. Now, I'll explain something about that. So I'm going to explain about cocaine, particularly.
Yeah.
So powder cocaine and crack cocaine are exactly the same chemical substance. All right? Somebody taking crack cocaine is seen as a drug addict, and is seen as an addiction problem. But somebody doing powder cocaine doesn't see themselves as an addict. They don't see themselves as a druggie. They don't see themselves as a problem drug taker.
Is that because it's more deemed as a party drug?
Yeah. They've now got a thing, and one of the top guys in the country said to me, oh, well, it's co-occurring. It's covered under co-occurring. I said, no, it isn't. Now, what co-occurring means in services is co-occurring mental health problems with addiction problems. Now, addiction, you look at crack cocaine, heroin, problematic drug use. Yeah. We're not people who are having a sniff at a weekend and going to work on Monday, Tuesday, working during the week, and then having the sesh at the weekend, they don't consider themselves as having a drug problem. It's a mentality. It's a type of mentality. It's, well, I'm just having a sniff at the weekend with my mates. So I'm just out on the sesh.
I'm just out with the boys, the
Out with the
girls, or
boys.
whatever.
Out with the
Yeah,
boys
yeah.
and girls. And I'm not saying this actual thing doesn't happen to women as well, because we do have women in service that have been struggling. So it does happen to women as well. It's not just men, but it's a really specific thing that is happening that doesn't come under any of the services that are currently existing. Now, we know that there's people that have gone to the doctor and said, look, I'm struggling with coke use, and they've been turned away from the doctors. Come back when you're clean. We know people who've gone to presented at crisis in the hospital, the crisis unit at the hospital, and they've been turned away because they've been intoxicated. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're in crisis, no matter what is in your system, if you're actually asking for help, you're asking for help. It doesn't matter which fucking service it fits under. It doesn't matter if it's not strictly mental health. It doesn't matter if it's not strictly addiction. If you're intoxicated and you want to end your life, then you need then if you're asking for help, for fuck's sake, give it the help that it needs. Don't be bloody, saying, "Oh, it don't, I'll see you when you're not using." What good? What use is that to anybody? When the penny dropped, and I understand, because I understand the prevention strategies. I understand how it feels to feel like that. I understand what it is to be bereaved from that. I understand this clearly. But but when I listen to these mothers telling me about their sons, I saw why they weren't being listened to, and that's what started the ball rolling with the things that I had from, with the results that I had from the survey, with the engagement that I'd done. I knew we had to do something more within the bigger picture.
Do you think that with your work that more people have actually had the thought, considered it, it's run through their mind, have considered taking their own lives than people could even imagine? Because it's
Yeah.
not something,
Well,
especially
what we're
males
finding,
wouldn't.
no, what
I
we're
was going to
finding
say,
now is
go on.
that when we've done engagement with people, and I've done podcasts particularly with Cullen of the Central Club. We actually held a conference. So in 2023 we held a conference, and what we had was three different panels, and we had one from the bereaved parents, which they told their story, which was incredibly brave of them to tell their story publicly. That's available to view online. We also then got we found three people that were willing to speak on screen. Now, the thing is with coke use, people don't really want to talk about it. People don't want to say that they've had that they indulge on a weekend at it. Why would they? It's a class A drug, and they probably know that there's quite a lot of stigma. It comes with a lot of stigma. Nobody's going to admit to it, especially if they're working. Could that be a reason that they're going to lose their job if somebody sees that? So we had issues where people didn't want to speak about it on screen, and we can understand that. But for us to be able to do any proper work with this, we've got to try and find people who are willing to talk about it. We found three very brave young men who spoke about it on the day, and it was filmed. And they spoke of their experience. And for us, it was mind-blowing, because it was the first time that we've been in a room with people and been able to ask questions, particularly the mothers, the bereaved families. And these guys had spoken about they'd actually tried to take their life during the come down, described what it was like. And I mean, one guy, oh my God, and which has led us to why we believe that there's the chemical compound, and I'll go into that in a minute. The chemical compound is what is the thing that's making them want to do it. Because like in the instance of one of the boys, he said that, you know, he forgot his parents were next door. He went into his room and was so in such a psychotic state, you know, transient state, that he forgot his parents were in the house. And he started taking these tablets because he felt so overwhelmingly compelled to do it because of what his brain was telling him at that moment in time. And he says it was like, I just had to do it. And then we've been told this quite a few times over it. So just to go back into so what we're talking about is the combination of two drugs. So we're talking about alcohol with cocaine. So no matter
is there a new drug that's made in the body? Because that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. So it's the only, so alcohol and cocaine, when they're mixed together, it creates a third unique a third unique toxin in the liver, and it's called cocoethylene. And the cocoethylene is what we've taken from, you know, we've shortened it to coalc for the coalk because that's the thing that I've set up. So the cocoethylene is 16 times more stronger than either drug taken alone, right? It lasts in your system 16 times more stronger.
Wow, never knew that.
It stays in the system longer. It also blocks the dopamine, because what cocaine does is once they consume cocaine, it actually blocks the reuptake inhibitors. So there's no dopamine getting back into the brain anytime soon.
Right, yeah.
That can last up to like 4 or 5 weeks or longer. So so this is why when people have a sniff, when from what I understand, people who've had experience, when they've had a sniff of cocaine, when they have the first sniff of cocaine, nothing like it. The actual alcohol and the cocaine work wonderfully together, apparently, because the two of them out is sort of what's the word? They sort of cancel out the negative effects of each thing. So if somebody was taking cocaine on their own, they'd be a bit jittery. Whereas the cocaine, so the alcohol makes it a little bit more relaxed. So it stops it from feeling like that jittery. So it's apparently, and the reason it's so popular is it's one of the best combinations on the up. The problem is on the up. Yeah. So what happens is it's one of the worst combinations on the down. A lot of people who take these recreational drugs either do it because they're in the company of other people. They do it because they're young, you know, they're just out with their peers. My son doesn't even want that. My son doesn't want to go to town and drink anymore because everybody's on the sniff. You know, he's a 19-year-old who doesn't want to be doing that, thankfully, because of what he's seen. But anybody thinking that these people are far removed from you is I'm sorry for you, because this can happen to anybody, right? This can literally happen to anybody and anybody's kids. This could have happened to my child. He started smoking weed, and I was like, I knew that the effects of weed. Now I research everything. Yeah, it's all right just say no to drugs, but when you're a 15 or 14-year-old and you're part of a group of people that are doing it and you want to feel part of that, peer pressure is one of the strongest drugs that there is. You'll do
I
it
just want to
because your mates
mention
are doing it.
I just want to talk about weed for a moment, because you mentioned weed, you mentioned cannabis. Some of the most paranoid, schizophrenic people are not the ones that have been addicted to the cocaine.
No,
It's the ones that have been abusing cannabis.
well,
They're the ones that have a lot of mental health issues.
I've got a personal theory. This is only personal theory. This isn't, this isn't a proven fact. But I think because cannabis is sort of seen as, oh, it's not, oh, that's okay. When I told my peers
Class B.
that my son was, oh, it's just a bit of weed, he'll grow out of it. But what we've got now, people are dealing on smartphones, right? So where they get the drugs from now, the majority of people, they don't go on the dark web, they don't go to street corners. The majority of people who get substances now do it on their smartphone, from their smartphone. And TikTok or Snapchat are the main ones. It's done on Insta as well. And they have symbols. So if it's a snowflake symbol, it's cocaine. If they have the there's a leaf sign for cannabis. Ket is a horse nose.
Wow.
Yeah, they do all their dealing online. Now, what happened with my son was that they started smoking cannabis, and I wasn't comfortable with it because we've never really done I mean, I did when I was younger, but when you've got kids, the last thing you want is to do that. But he started doing it, and we decided to drug test him, and I started. You can buy drug tests off Amazon. I bought drug tests, and it stayed in his system. He couldn't believe that it stayed in his system for like 6 to 8 weeks. And I basically said, "Well, Luke, there's two aspects that I didn't want him smoking weed. The first one is because I've suffered from mental illness for the majority of my life. Now, okay, most of it's trauma related, but now I've been diagnosed with ADHD. But people who have a history of mental health,
join the crew.
yeah, people who have a history of mental health problems, are more inclined to develop mental health issues through the use of drugs. And weed in itself, when I was younger, I mean, it used to be resin that they had. Now they have all these hybrid that are bred for its various performance ratings, right?
Yeah.
And it's bred for specific results, so they're getting people more stuff. I mean, the stuff that they are in, that is coming through with the weed now can be very too strong for some people, and that, I think, is a worry. There's evidence to suggest that the younger you start, the more likely you are to develop psychosis or schizophrenia. So if you start at 15, by the time you're 25, there's a high probability that you'll probably have paranoia or schizophrenia. There's loads of people who say about the paranoia, but nobody wants to talk about that side of things. Now, I did, because I've got mental health background, and I thought, well, I don't want him developing a problem on top of a problem. So that was why that was the reason that I stopped him. My own personal opinion about weed is that I think it should be legalized, because, like with
I do as well.
Like with medication, if you get medication, if it's legally available, then you will have the full information of what is involved in that drug. The other thing it will stop, and this is the biggest key to it, I think, is the fact that because they're getting it on smartphone, that a dealer will offer them something else. Now, on my son's case, they offered flake, a free bag of flake. And I was like, well, flake is a derivative of coke. It's a type of cocaine. I don't know whether it's cocaine.
What is it then? Is it
It's a type of
stronger?
cocaine. it's a derivative of cocaine, so it's not cocaine itself, but it's probably, messed about with some. And that's another thing as well with illegal drugs. How do you know what you're getting? We do with a company called Wedinos, who test drugs. And a lot of this, if you see somebody that's taking coke, so you can pretty much tell somebody who's on the coke, and you can tell they got the jaw going. But that, in actual fact, is not the cocaine. It's probably the stomach wormer that's in it, the cow wormer that's in it.
Wow.
And that's it. I think you're right. I think there's somebody that I know people suffer with being paranoid and never smoke weed. That's exactly, yeah. We don't need any help to develop mental health problems, do we? We don't need to. But it's proven that that's one of the side effects of weed. And the thing is, you don't know what you're taking. Do you know that?
Look at that bottom, Maggie. Look at that. Sorry, look at that bottom comment there from D20 Jenny. She's one of my oldest. She's a moderator and one of my oldest. She's from Arkansas.
And that's exactly it. That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's a great point.
If it was legal and if it's properly regulated, then yeah, if that's your choice to do it. But we need to be making informed choices, and that's the problem with illegal drugs, that you cannot possibly make an informed choice because you do not know what is in that bag. So that's part of the issue. I think the fact that people say, no, it's just a bit of weed. How then? It's not a massive step to taking anything else, is it? Especially if you're getting the information on your smartphone, you can buy anything you want. I've got proof that 56% of people take drugs for recreational purposes only, not because they're trying to cope with something. 68% of 18-year-olds have tried drugs before they go to university. 58% of 18-year-olds tried drugs, and 1 in 5 13 to 14-year-olds have seen drugs on social media. So this is how the world we're living in now. It's only a phone call away, right? So it's available to anybody. But what I'm saying is make informed choices. The fact that the brain doesn't, the front part of the brain does not stop growing until they're 25. If you're going to be taking mind-altering drugs before your brain is properly developed, then you could be giving yourself great brain damage. And that's what I said.
Now, we never learnt that. I never learnt that in school about now. If people had education on the fact that the brain wasn't developed until you're 20, I think that should be part of the curriculum about drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that this is one of the things that I'm hoping to do. Somebody's saying about drugs are good. Yeah, they do feel good. They do. That's why people take them. People wouldn't take drugs if they didn't feel good. But the point is that you don't know what's in them until you've taken them. And how do you know what strength they are? You don't know what strength they are. And what we're finding is, going back to the whole point of this, the podcast today, is that we've discovered an actual link between the come down and somebody taking their life. And we're seeing epidemic levels of people taking their life during the come down, and we need to make people aware that this is happening, that this can happen. Pink cocaine, or 2CB as it's called, it doesn't even have any coke in it. It's a combination of MDMA, ketamine, and something else I can't remember. But it hasn't actually got any cocaine in. And I understand it was something that was in Liam Payne's toxicology that he took.
Right, okay.
I will say, so I'll go back. I'll keep going back to to the cocaine issue. So cocaine and alcohol particularly is a really strong substance. When they're mixed together on the up, it's fantastic. But when it's coming down, so the other thing about cocaine is that people feel, because the initial rush is so wonderful, a lot of the time that people keep sniffing, because it only lasts about 10-20 minutes, people keep sniffing to try and get the high, and they'll never get it again because it's started blocking it blocks the reuptake inhibitors. So nobody's going to feel that amount of high until they've actually had a massive break from it. So people that are constantly sniffing to try and get that high, it gives them a bit of a lift, but not the same. So yeah, when you've got that toxin cocoethylene in your system, it can also keep you awake for a certain amount of time. And one of the things that we believe is a product of this the cocoethylene is the fact that when you're sleep deprived, and you've probably not eaten either because it's stimulant, you probably haven't eaten, that when they start coming down, and it can happen really, really quickly, sort of in the last, it can happen in the last hour, that they start to feel this overwhelming, what we believe is a psychosis. We believe that there's a psychosis that happens that makes somebody overwhelmingly feel shame, that they can't take it anymore, that they feel as if they're going to end their life, that they just need to get themselves out of this thing. And this is where we're finding people are trying to take their lives. Now, what we think happened with Liam Payne, because there was stuff in his toxicology that came up on his initial tox. They said there was cocaine and alcohol. There was other things as well, but he displayed what's called an excited delirium before he died. Now, that's where they get really aggravated and a bit violent and a bit, messy. If you look up the details of DJ Kamal Edwards's untimely death, he had an excited delirium before he died, and he had a massive heart.
What's an excited
An
delirium? Sorry.
excited delirium, it in the US they call it an excited delirium. In the UK they call it an acute behavioural disturbance. And what it is, it's like this phenomenon that happens, and it's more prevalent with cocaine and alcohol. So on the come down from cocaine and alcohol, because what cocaine actually does, it actually narrows the arteries. So what actually can happen, it can inflate the heart. So often what you see, if they don't die from their own hand, they could die of like a heart arrhythmia, which is what DJ Kamal Edwards died of. And I think if we were to see a proper inquest on Liam Payne, which I know is dreadful, but I think that he probably would have had an enlarged heart, because it's symptomatic of the same thing that DJ Kamal Edwards thing, and the research that is around that actual type of death. So
can we take a few minutes to talk about what you know about Liam Payne, or what your opinions are on what may have
what's
happened?
been on I do not know anything other than what's been on the internet.
Well,
I know that
I've not looked into much of it, but I
I
know it's
know that
quite
he
a
was
top.
displaying, violent behaviour. He was smashing things up, and he was not in his right mind before he died, which is evident from the photos. I think his death will be ruled as a accident. There's no way to prove that he meant to go off go off the balcony. It's just absolutely, just so sad. Just
What
so
would make
sad.
somebody fall? Like, do you know about, obviously, how do you fall off a looking at it, like,
Well,
do you
if
know what
you're
I mean? Like,
upset, I mean, if you're upset and you're flaying about and you're aggravated. I mean, if this excited delirium, when this takes over, it's a real agitated state they're in. They're not in a normal state of mind. For him to be bashing the telly and there was a scuffle in the downstairs.
mm.
He wouldn't have known what had happened, and it could have been a scuffle. It could have been a scuffle near the window or whatever. If he really did fall, or they're never going to be able to prove it unless somebody was actually in the room with him.
See, I thought, so looking at Liam Payne over the years, in my opinion, with his interviews and stuff like that, he's always struck me as someone that suffers from some kind of mental health disorder. Now, with someone that's got ADHD and OCD, I'm kind of hypersensitive to noticing mental health disorders in people. And with his interviews and stuff, and the way that some of the things that he said, and the way that he said it, and even if you like look at his eyes, and you can tell a lot from the eyes, can't you? I always felt that he wasn't very happy as a person, and there were signs that he wasn't mentally well, basically, and he did suffer. So I actually thought that he did end it himself, but then there's things come out saying that he fell. There's even darker conspiracies saying that it was worse than that. You know
I
what I
think.
mean? That
Well, there's always
he
going
was
to be
helped.
conspiracy theories. Nobody's ever going to know, and the only person will know whoever was in the room with him that day, really. But what I can say with some sort of you know, what I can say with some sort of authority is the fact that when cocaine and alcohol and any other drugs are in the mix, anything could happen. You're not in your right
Mm.
mind. Tomorrow, actually, is the first anniversary of one particular young man who was 22. And
Wow.
he took his
No way.
life during the come down. He was, as everybody explains, he's full of life. He's full of the joys of spring. He loved a bit of coke. There might have been other drugs involved, but it was definitely coke and alcohol. And he just couldn't cope with the come down. We've got to have a bit more compassion for people, and understand why. Because if we just say people who take drugs don't deserve to have any help, that's fucking wrong. It's wrong, and it's out of order. Yeah, drugs kill. People take drugs for all sorts of reasons, and as I said earlier, 56% of people that we know of take it recreationally, and I think it's probably more than that as they get older. So people, they're not really. What happens if it's your child? What happens if it's your child that's just gone out one night and made a stupid decision? Oh, oh, go on, one won't hurt. And maybe that one is all they needed to find this magical, you know, feeling that they've not felt ever, and it might be at a time when they need it.
Mm.
Who's to say? Who's to say? Who's judging all of this? Nobody sets out as a. I think what we ought to be doing is looking at adolescence and this thing about the fact that your brain hasn't developed until you're 25. I think we need more services around adolescence. So between 11 and 25, we need to be having more care for young people that, I think it's natural for young people to push their parents away at that age. It's natural for them to want to discover the world and try new things that their parents probably wouldn't agree with. There's more festivals than there's ever been. We never used to have the amount of festivals that we have now. There's bloody festivals in every town. near on in
Yeah.
the summer, and they're
Yeah.
hard for people to want to just go out and get smashed. But
That's
what
drug
we're
heaven festivals, isn't
drug,
it?
yeah, drug heaven. But if we're going to start demonizing people we need to be educating people about it, not demonizing people. We need
Mm.
to be opening our ears and eyes and saying, well, what if, and are you going to be the person that's going to judge somebody and say, well, they deserve what they get? Do you think that? Do you think people deserve what they get just because they've got a chemical in them that I believe is causing them to want to take their own life?
Do you think that the modern day that we're in, with the youth of today, so like high school age up to like college and mid-20s, so that kind of generation
Yeah,
in the modern day, with the internet boom, social media, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, do you think that that's had a much more
huge impact.
negative
Yeah,
effect on people, and more people take drugs now because of social media than they used to?
I think,
Because
and
there's
I think what those platforms have done have just made it more accessible.
Yeah, but also as well, the point that I'm making is like, for example, let's take Facebook or Instagram as an example. Now, you're only ever going to put. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Facebook. I just don't want to
I think what you're
pri-
saying is
privacy.
a negative aspect on young people's mental health. Absolutely, because
Say
we've
say
got
there's a picture. Say a woman puts a picture on Instagram. Now that photograph will normally be the most perfect photograph that woman's taken. She might have took 40 pictures before.
mm,
She's found the best one in her eyes.
filters.
She's filtered it. She's done whatever she's done to it. And then other women may look at that and go like, "I'm not as good as her. I'm not as good as her." Or you see, like I've seen it when I used to have Facebook. You'll see a couple or a young family, and their lives are perfect. Every single picture
Matching
and post is
pajamas.
perfect, perfect, perfect. And then yeah. And then you sit there and you think, I ain't got a family. I ain't got a girlfriend. I've not got a kid. I'm not happy. Me and my girlfriend or boyfriend, we're not great. But the reality is that those photographs and those posts, they're actually not reflecting real life.
No.
So people,
Well,
I
it goes
think
back
that
to what you were
modern day
saying.
has brought on mental health problems
Yeah,
more.
I think it's got a lot to answer for, and it goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning when there was people coming on and saying rubbish, that hurt people hurt people. You know, there are. I think
That
it
is
does
true.
make people feel isolated, and I think it does make people feel as if this is everybody's life's wonderful and this is happening to them.
Tell us more about co-alc.
More about co-op. So the co-op
Yeah,
alliance
you're
basically was
yeah.
I set it up really to try and change things at government level because um, the national strategies don't include this type of death. And they keep saying that there's not enough evidence, and we keep getting more people that are coming on board to our thing. So the reason for the Co-op Alliance is really to create more awareness around the issue of come downs. So that's what Co-op is, and it's we're a group of bereaved mothers and other interested people who want to understand what's happening and create more resources and I guess help getting help to people at the right time. So we're creating awareness around it. That's what the co-op is.
Who else would you recommend if you are going through struggles with alcohol or
I'd
drugs?
say
What?
get in touch with your local. Well, there's always Frank, but the Frank isn't very thing. I always recommend if you're in Wales to ring Dan 24/7. They're a
Okay.
fantastic resource. If you Google something like drug and alcohol services for your local area, you could probably find something there. There isn't yet a nationwide thing, but what I do is if people contact us, I will find out what their area is and find out what resources there are in that area.
Have you found with your work and what you've done over the years that have you found that there is more people taking their own lives at Christmas time?
No,
Because
and I researched this because
go on.
I thought about it. I think the most prevalent time is around springtime, apparently. Um,
Wow, I wonder why.
I don't know. Um, could hypothesize, I suppose, but yeah,
I
that's
wonder that really shocks me. I would say if I was like guessing what the most common time to take your own life, I'd say like dipping into like November. You know what I mean?
mm,
December. Cold nights, short days, build up to Christmas. Some people hate Christmas because they don't have friends or family or kids or
well,
whatever
I
it may
mean
be.
that is a big. It is a big thing, and I mean it's not to say that people don't. They do, but statistically, it's not any more prevalent than other times. Apparently, it's springtime. Whether people feel as if they've like, we know now that we're going to be looking at a lot of people who are going to be trying to go sober and trying to change things about the life that they don't like in the new year, and
Yeah,
perhaps maybe they've tried that and then failed, and then consider themselves as failures. But I
that's
don't
a
know.
good.
I don't know.
That's a
I don't
good.
know why that is. It's just a fact. It's just that it does seem to be more. Yeah, high level of relapse. It could well be that state. But yeah, it's just a fact. But you know, any time is any time that there's loss around, or somebody's going through a breakup or going through financial difficulty, it can be all sorts of things.
There's about three people that I know that have done it. One was due to cocaine use. One was oh you
I
tilted, you
know I'm,
slide you
I'm
slide
just leaning that way now. I'm just going with
slide
it.
slide away Oasis. One was ketamine. A lot to do
Massive
with
problem.
yeah, a lot to do with ketamine, and
Yeah,
another was and we don't even know why the other person did, and that just show they didn't have any signs
yeah,
really. And I remember that once there was someone within a group of friends, no names to be mentioned, but we were all talking to this particular person, and someone said something really poignant, and we're all a group of lads. Do you know what I mean? And you got bravado and this, that, and the other, but slowly over time, people have opened up more. And someone just, when we were talking to this person about how they were feeling and that, someone said, like, the person who was feeling it said, I feel X, Y, Z, all the negative emotions. And then someone just came out of nowhere and said, I'd rather listen to that you've got, all of your problems, than hear your eulogy.
yeah,
That's powerful, that.
yeah, yeah.
It's powerful.
I think
Um,
the biggest thing I always say to people is whatever you're feeling now, and it's not to say it isn't as intense as it's ever felt before, but it will pass. It does pass. And if you can get to sleep is a massive factor in you know emptying your emotional brain of all the rubbish that you've had to go through in a day. You're tired, you're stressed out. Try and get some sleep. Try and eat something nice,
yeah.
nutritious. One of the biggest factors is not being alone. I mean, one of the best things for my own mental health, believe it or not, and you rung me this morning, is going to the gym. I mean,
Same here. Same
talking
here.
of talking of Christmas miracles, seeing me going into the gym without any, coercive control is a bloody miracle. And but it's really good for people. And I never thought I'd hear myself say that, but
I
physical
shout from the rafters
exercise,
about going to the gym. I always have done.
it's a massive boost. And I think people, there's lots of things people can do for themselves to help themselves. Don't underestimate how really difficult it can feel for people going through it. Don't never say, they're doing it for it. Even if people, we had a thing where people say, oh, they're attention seeking. What about help seeking? People are help seeking. If somebody
Yeah.
says that they feel like that, then there's a good reason that they're feeling like that. Do you know what I mean?
What advice would you give to someone who has an addiction to alcohol or cocaine or any drug really? And what advice would you give to someone that is contemplating ending it? Loaded two questions there,
Two
really.
questions. So, if you're struggling with any type of substance use, the first thing you do is get in touch with somebody that might be able to help, which is a drug and alcohol service. Reach out to them, explain what you're going through. If there's a reason that they can't help you, have a look into things like apps or YouTube. There's loads of things on YouTube where people have overcome their addictions or whatever. Taking the first step. I think once you've took the first step to ask somebody some help, I think it's just a case that doors might open for you in that direction. Just because one door might not open as quickly doesn't mean to say that you just stop there. Just keep asking. You will find help. There are people out there who can help. If you get in touch with the Call Alliance, we can find what's available in your area and link you up with them. There's apps. There's a Breaking Free app you can use. There's other apps that you can use, and you just need a code to put in, and then you can, monitor yourself and try and get yourself off it. Educate yourself. Understand what the drug is actually doing to you. Understand what the alcohol is doing to you. Understand why you're doing it. And yeah, stop
That's a
being
good
the
one.
people who are doing it. There's another thing as well, that if you're going to stop one, stop it all.
Yeah.
Don't just stop the cocaine without stopping the alcohol, because what you'll find is you'll have the alcohol, you lower your inhibitions again, and then you'll say, "Oh, fuck it, I'll
Want
just
the
have a lot,"
cocaine?
and you're off again. Yeah. So if you're gonna do it, try not doing anything, because what you've got to understand is what these drugs do to you, right? Alcohol lowers your inhibitions. So why would you drink knowing that there's a possibility that you'll go into the pub and you'll see somebody having a sniff and you'll think, fuck it, I'll have a sniff with them.
Yeah.
That's what happened to one of our lads. That's what happened to Tom. He'd been clean for 18 months and he went out drinking, and the alcohol lowers the inhibitions. So get help, ask for help. And if nobody else can help, get in touch with me, and I'll make sure if somebody gets in touch, we put you in touch with somebody who can help.
I wonder if Liam Payne reached out to anybody. Has that come out? Because I've not done much on Liam Payne. Do you know if anything's come out in the media about if he reached out to anyone about any issues? Because
I
I
don't.
just don't really
I
know.
think possibly he was in the depths of addiction or substance that he probably wasn't aware that he needed the help at that time.
There's
Maybe
also a possibility that maybe he didn't want to speak to anybody because
of his
shame that he's in
status.
the limelight, famous.
Well, there's all that as well. I mean, how do you know that? I mean, one of the and this will go to the next one. So, if you're struggling with suicidal feelings, then get in touch with Samaritans, Papyrus. There's loads of groups that can help. There's lots of man's groups that can help. There's Mind online. They help with things. There's loads of there's loads of helplines available. But yeah, somebody famous, I think it'd be really tough for them to not feel as if they're going to be, recognized. I think it must be so isolating. It must have been so isolating for him to be going through whatever he was going through.
I think that he probably thought that, like, if so, like the normal person, like the non celebrity, if you've got problems, you can go to your doctor, or you can speak to friends or family or whoever. I think someone with such high status as Liam Payne did, arguably one of the biggest boy bands of all time, to be going through what he went through. Maybe it is. Maybe like you feel like you can't speak to someone because the next day, bang, in the papers, Liam
Yeah.
Payne addicted to cocaine, Liam Payne taking ketamine, Liam Payne,
Well, I think
whatever
actually,
whatever it was.
I think one of the problems that we've got with what we're doing, a lot of people don't want to admit cocaine use, and a lot of celebrities, when they say they've had addiction issues, that it is probably
Yeah,
cocaine, and they just can't talk about it because they would get shot down in flames. Or that they'd be judged by everybody, that there is. So people don't tend to admit that they've had a problem with the cocaine, but we know it's there.